I view myself as a city founder more even than an entrepreneur. If I'm going to build a city, I need to figure out what is it going to export? What can it export? What can it produce? What can it build? Why would people choose to live here rather than live where they came from? Seasteading has the capacity for more autonomy and easier negotiation to obtain that autonomy compared to free cities and network states. Seasteading is like the layer zero, the physical infrastructure that the layer one runs on top of. So if the layer one is a network state, the layer zero is the seastead, because you need the physical space to occupy.
This episode of the Free Cities podcast is brought to you by Veritas Villages. Now, Veritas Villages are freedom-oriented, energy self-sufficient luxury communities designed for people who want to enjoy peace of mind and real freedom in today's unpredictable world. Join a community of like-minded neighbours who value privacy and independence in a place where you can use Bitcoin, including for the purchase of your property. www.veritasvillages.com/free cities for more info, and in the meantime, enjoy the conversation. Maybe, since I've never met you before, can we start with, can you give me a bit of a lowdown on who you are and what it is that you do? I know what it is, but I'd quite like to hear it from you first.
Sure. So my name is Mitchell Suchner. I am a seasteader, I guess, first and foremost. I'm business partners with someone who's based out of Florida, and we're running ArkPad. And ArkPad is a general seasteading company. So we're developing seasteads themselves, the floating structures. We're trying to I guess I should say, manage and operate those structures to turn a profit. That's why we built the Reef Resort. We're trying to build related technology. We're trying to market the technology. We're anything, I guess, related to seasteading. We have a project ongoing that is somehow a part of it. The main things that I've been talking about over the last few days has been the Reef Resort, because it's a thing that's on Airbnb and Travelocity and Booking.com. You can book it right now. You can go and stay there. So it's a big public thing. But we have a bunch of other projects under the hood that some people are not aware of.
Can I ask you how old you are? You seem quite young to me.
29.
Oh, is that right? That is very young in this. How come you're so into seasteading then, and especially the business side of it? I know a lot of people who like the idea of seasteading, but there's only really three main companies involved in actually building the structures, and the actual community of seasteaders is relatively small. So have you got a background in like a marine something? I don't know.
Actually, my background was in just general computer science. When I first graduated with a degree in computer science, I worked for a few banks. I managed the database of a bank. I managed the customer-facing website for another bank for a little while. That was the main thing that I did. But ideologically, I've always been inclined towards liberty and libertarian, ideas. And so really, what happened, the big turning point for me was when we had the government lockdowns, we had the COVID lockdowns, and I was kind of scrolling through YouTube videos, and I found out about the seastead that was built by Chad Elwartowski in Thailand, and that kind of woke me up to the idea of seasteading. That's one of the few times that seasteading kind of went viral, where a lot of people got hundreds of thousands. The whole little series the Seasteading Institute got like 1 million views or something along those lines. So that kind of got a lot more eyeballs on them. And so that's how I got into it, right? And then once I found out, seasteading is a libertarian thing. This can bring you to international waters. You can basically create a new country out of this. I actually found seasteading before I found the free cities movement and the network state movement. For me, seasteading was first, but I still today think that seasteading has the capacity for more autonomy and easier negotiation to obtain that autonomy compared to free cities and network states, because seasteading can take you physically out of the existing countries, and that's something that the other projects aren't doing. So as I see it, seasteading is like the layer zero, the physical infrastructure that the layer one runs on top of. So if the layer one is a network state, the layer zero is the seastead, because you need the physical space to occupy. So we can build the physical infrastructure, and then the free cities projects and the network state projects can come and inhabit that infrastructure.
I'm with you on that. It took me a few years to come to the same conclusion. I'm slightly different. I see the seasteading as as I see, for example, I see Prosper as a land-based seastead, because seasteads are the most, if you're into private cities anyway, if you're into proper sovereign private cities, then the seastead is the best example, because it's the most purest form, I think, other than possibly flying around in space or something, with on a Death Star or something like that.
And the last speech at the Mama Shelter Hotel, the last like decentralized day thing, he was talking about space steading, and the whole time my father was with me, and we were in the background watching this. The whole time we were going, I asked him his opinion. Do you think this space steading thing is a good idea? He said, I think it's a great idea, but it's a bit further off than seasteading, and that's true. But it is a great idea. I think space steading will be huge. In 1,000 years, there will probably be more people living in space than living on Earth, hopefully, but that's 1,000 years away.
Well, and as Joe Quirk would always say, it's too expensive to do it in space. It's quite cheap to do it on the water. And in fact, so many of the ways they train astronauts, they train space projects, they're all done underwater. And if you think there's not enough space on the Earth to do it, you're wrong, because you're not including underwater as well. And seasteading can be an underwater thing as well. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it being an underwater thing. When I was looking at your CV on the Free Cities website, and it says that your business is involved in AI, ocean mining, drones, a load of other stuff. Not just, we'll come to ArkPad in a bit, but that seemed interesting. What about what's ocean mining to begin with? What is that?
Sure. Yeah, so going back to it, we're involved in a bunch of stuff because there's a bunch of things that are related to seasteading. And we're trying to develop all of these technologies and make them accessible, profitable, and beneficial for future seasteads. So going back to this ocean mining thing. Ocean mining, there's an easy way to do it, which is tightly regulated, and there's a more complicated way to do it, which currently regulations don't exist. For that more complicated way. The simple way is seafloor mining. With seafloor mining, there is, I don't know the exact number, something like $1 trillion in rare earths and valuable metals and platinum and all kinds of things in the seafloor. And there's these little, they're called polymetallic nodules, and they have magnesium and all kinds of different metals that are kind of lumped together into like a big metal ball about the size of a golf ball or a softball on the seafloor. And there's millions of these on the seafloor. If you can just scoop them up and harvest them, you've got a mine that's producing multiple different types of metals, and you don't even really have an ore that you need to refine heavily. You just get pure lumps of metal coming up off the seafloor. It is a gold mine, potentially literally a gold mine, right?
Where is this?
There are multiple different zones. I think one is called I'm gonna botch the name here, the Clipperton Zone or the Clarion-Clipperton Zone. That's one location where there's a big field of these polymetallic nodules for thousands of square miles.
Really?
Yes.
That's not very well known about, right?
I know about it. A lot of people in like the marine industry know about it, but it's illegal to harvest it right now. You cannot legally. There is zero capacity to harvest this.
How far down is it?
5 or 6 kilometers.
Oh, Jesus! Right, proper. Is that so? It's not even that it's legal. It's probably very difficult as well.
It's difficult, but we have the ability. If we wanted to, if the green light happened tomorrow, we could harvest these polymetallic nodules. So I have the numbers in front of me here. It's 5.95 billion tons of manganese, 270 million tons of nickel, 230 million tons of copper, copper's valuable, and 50 million tons of cobalt. And cobalt is one of those rare earths that's used in the production of batteries that Elon Musk sometimes talks about. Cobalt and lithium are both very important for batteries. And cobalt, a lot of it comes from Africa, so it's kind of politically contentious. But yeah, so the total commercial value of this is hundreds of billions of dollars, not quite $1 trillion, but as the value of these metals goes up over time, this one zone will probably end up being worth about $1 trillion at some point in the future. And there are other zones like the Clarion-Clipperton Zone.
And did you say that the reason that you can't go down there and mine it right now is because they don't really know what the problems might be if you bring it up?
So it's a desert. There's not a lot of life down there. There's some anglerfish. There's some, probably there's some giant squids and things like that as well. And that's certainly true. But I don't think those metal nodules aren't really nutritious, right? There's certainly bacteria that grows on them, but it's more being used for its surface area. It's not producing energy. It's not providing nutrition. It's a thing that if you removed it from the environment, it would probably be fine. I know there's a lot of environmentalists that would say, well, we don't know, so you can't remove it, but it has enormous, even removing 5% of those polymetallic nodules would have a big impact on our ability to access things like cobalt and copper, which is important to access. So, but they won't let you mine any of it. You can't mine any of it. It's about 4 kilometers deep.
But they will, or what do you think? I mean, is it something that you're planning on trying to extract at some point?
Not me, no. I think there are companies out there that are planning to extract this and are actively lobbying. But again, you basically have to lobby the UN, which is a difficult thing to do. And so seafloor mining is hard, and not because it's logistically hard, the technology exists, but it's hard in terms of regulations. What's not as difficult in terms of regulations right now is, what if you had a technology that instead of scraping these rare earth metals off the seafloor and disrupting the environment, what if there were little tiny bits of it that were just floating around in the ocean, and you could create kind of a vacuum to just suck it up out of the water? And so you suck up a bunch of water, the salt water goes in, it extracts the cobalt or the lithium or whatever, and it goes back out with everything included, just not the cobalt or the lithium, but nothing else changes. It doesn't affect the pH, doesn't affect the salinity, doesn't affect the dissolved oxygen, nothing. There's zero environmental impact. That's the technology that we're developing. And we have that technology working in the laboratory. 2 different laboratories we've had it working right now. That's already a viable technology. Us and maybe a couple of universities are the only ones that have this technology working right now. And not only that, but once you have a technology that can extract minerals from the water column in the ocean as opposed to the seafloor, right? Lower regulation, but also the technology can spread to other dissolved minerals. So we have it working for lithium. Very recently, we got a round in the laboratory working for rubidium. Now, lithium is used to produce batteries. Rubidium is used to produce lasers, night vision optics, things like that. We're also working on cesium, and we're working on other rare earths as well. So these are things that we have functional right now.
Can you be sure that there's not an application of those metals in the water? You said they're inert or whatever, and but I mean, I suppose there's a possibility they're part of the ecosystem, is it?
No, to some degree, they're definitely part of the ecosystem. Even iron is a part of the ecosystem. So there's a lot of dissolved iron in the ocean, right? And what they did an experiment with I believe this is the Soviet Union decades ago. They took a bunch of rust shavings and they dumped it in the Southern Ocean, and there was a huge algal bloom after that, because what they found was that iron was a thing that basically all phytoplankton needs to produce energy through photosynthesis. And one of the main bottlenecks to the production of, to algal blooms, to having more algae, is really just a lack of iron in the water. It's one of the nutrients that is in low abundance, right? But you look at something like lithium, for example. Lithium is not used in as many biological processes as compared to photosynthesis. A single cell of algae needs to photosynthesize a lot. It doesn't need a lot of lithium. So even if you removed 90% or 95% of the lithium, and we know this because, we can look in areas where there are different concentrations of lithium and different, and lithium just doesn't have a big impact on the environment. So what I'm saying is, it's a lot safer, and arguably it's a lot more, or I guess has less effect on the environment to pull an element out of the water column than it is to scoop it off the seafloor. Another thing to consider is osmosis. So if I have a patch of ocean where I magically remove all of the lithium in an instant, the rest of the ocean still has a bunch of lithium. It's all going to flood back in there, not in the same concentration, but it kind of has a way of immediately renewing itself to some degree. So again, the environmental impact, if you do it in one local area, is considerably decreased. So I think that we can make a much better argument from a regulatory standpoint. And again, one big difference is, it's illegal to mine the seafloor right now. There's no laws against taking minerals out of the water column. But even when there are, it'll be an easier battle to say, I'm going to take lithium out of the water column.
I take it that when you mentioned this is all part of a sort of overarching strategy to work at sea, things like ocean mining could be the sort of economic driver behind seasteads, etc. Is that kind of the idea?
Absolutely. I mean, every town, every city, every country had to start by producing something. There have been very few places that got their start based off of being a service-based economy. I guess you could say Venice was probably historically, it got started, it really took off because of trade, right? But most places initially gain a population because there's farming or there's mining, one of those two things. So if you want to support a city, if you want to be able to grow a city, it has to have something to export. It has to be able to produce something at a profit. So the ocean is great for producing seafood, and it can be also great for mining rare earths that, ironically, there's a lot more rare earths in the water than there is on land.
So how does that all mix with drone tech and AI then?
Well, it doesn't. I guess you could say it doesn't mix, right? The ocean mining doesn't really mix with AI in a way that's direct. It mixes because they're both related to seasteading. So the ocean mining is the seasteads are how can I build a floating city? The ocean mining is how can I give the floating city something to produce? The AI is, or I should say the drones are, how can I have better logistics or even defenses for a floating city? And then the AI is, how can I control those drones without a human operator to make them cheaper? Or how can I maybe even do something like, build an AI bot to trade crypto or something like that, right? So we have an AI team. Right now they have a few different projects they're working on. I can't really go into detail on the AI because those projects are a bit more private and not public facing. But, certainly one of the things we want to do is take the drones that we're developing and kind of automate those with AI. You can imagine that having goods, boated out to you, even if you're like 13 miles out, right? You need a boat to come back and forth and dispose of your waste and to bring you food and to bring you fresh water and things like that. So having a boat that doesn't need a driver is going to considerably reduce your costs.
Well, I spoke to Grant Remont last year. He has all his deliveries come out on drones, doesn't he? He has food dropped off and at his floating place. Yeah. I think, obviously it's the future. You can tell that.
But those are probably flying drones.
Yeah.
The ones that sit in the water can carry 10 times more weight and use, less than half the amount of fuel or have much greater extended range. Obviously, if you want to talk about logistics with drones, you want water-based drones. You don't want flying drones, especially for carrying a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I see what you mean. So how does this all fit in then with ArkPad? Because those things you're talking about there, they seem quite... Actually, I suppose not. But when you talk about it, I'm thinking of giant floating cities. But that's probably not true, is it? I mean, you could have a mining rig, for example, an ocean mining rig, which could be relatively small,
size of a house, yeah.
And when you when you extract sort of these. When you extract things from the ocean, where do they go? Where do they sit? And do you need a massive... I mean, are we talking on an industrial scale? Or,
I mean, right now we're doing it lab scale. So we're doing it in the laboratory. What we're doing is we're actually taking big, 10-gallon jugs of water from the ocean. We bring it into a laboratory. We test it. Can we extract lithium? Yes, we can. Can we extract rubidium? Yes, we can. Can we extract cesium? We're working on it, right? And so... we're doing it right now with pure salt water, which is a big thing because a lot of like universities and scientific institutions, what they'll do when they're doing these experiments, they'll take like distilled, bottled water, they'll introduce a little bit of lithium or rubidium or something like that, and they'll say, okay, can I extract this from pure water? Yes, I can. My technology is a success. They don't consider that there's all these other ions in a saltwater matrix that can all interfere with this chemical process, and so your machine might work with distilled water, but it's not going to work with salt water, which is very, very chemically complex. And so our stuff actually works with salt water. I know this is kind of, I know this is boring for people to hear, but it's really exciting, interesting technology actually, because in 20 years, who knows how much of the world's lithium could come from the ocean because of what we're doing right now. Right now, there's a monopoly on lithium. There's a handful of South American countries, Chile, Bolivia, I think Peru, they control a huge supply of the world's lithium. And America basically doesn't produce anywhere near enough lithium to satisfy its own needs. So having the ability to produce lithium basically anywhere in the world, or especially near like hydrothermal vents, which there's thousands of those, that higher concentrations of lithium there, it's going to be a really big game changer.
Hydrothermal vents are really deep, aren't they? You find those around the Marianas Trench, don't you? I studied that a little bit at university, because there's actually life in hydrothermal vents.
Oh, yeah.
Which is bizarre. I studied zoology at university a very long time ago, and hydrothermal vents were one of those you'll never guess what, but in this extremely acidic, toxic quagmire in a hydrothermal vent, you get basically life.
Yeah.
And it's completely dark, and the pressure is of some ridiculous, But working down there, people get down that far. Do they go down to the Marianas Trench in sort of like manned vehicles and stuff? Is that possible?
They have. There have been manned vehicles that went into the Marianas Trench. I can't remember the last time that it happened. I know it's happened. I know people have been down there.
It just is total tangent. What did you think about the guys that went down to the Titanic? I mean, in a way, they're not too distant from the kind of world you're in, experimental.
Are you talking about the
guys that went?
What's the name of the company again?
I can't remember.
Was it like Blue?
Whatever. Did you? I mean, it looked irresponsible.
The homemade submarine guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, we shouldn't laugh, mate. They got completely compressed.
Probably I should not laugh at that. I'm sorry. Now I got myself laughing. I had a conversation with my parents after this happened. Because they were like, "Oh, wow, this is kind of similar to what you're doing. Should we be concerned? Is this dangerous?" And I told them, no, this is not. What they did is taking humans wildly out of their own natural environment, right? If you take humans to space and something goes wrong with the spaceship, everybody dies because the environment is dramatically different from the one that humans are acclimatized to. The surface of the ocean is nowhere near as deep as the Marianas Trench. Everybody can go on a boat. Everybody can go cross the ocean on a, even like a rubber dinghy. And people do it all the time. It's not as, I'm not going to say seasteading is not complex, but it's not as complex and it's not as dangerous as deep sea travel or space travel. So there's not as many things that can go wrong, fortunately. I know there are some people, Atlantis Sea Colony is one that comes to mind, where they want people to live on the bottom of the ocean, and that's awesome. But I think that it's a little bit further away. I'd be willing to bet that it's closer than Seasteading. I think there'll be underwater cities before there are space cities.
I think that goes without saying. I've got a feeling they'll even be testing them on purpose under there. Yeah. Because it's a good environment to test them. Yeah, something just occurred to me when you think about the seasteading ecosystem. You're the only company that's actually thinking about creating a way of monetizing your seastead at the same time, other than, obviously Airbnbs or is that right? Is that a fair observation of what you're doing? Is it you're trying to give it a use, like a good economic use case, almost before you've actually created the actual thing?
Yes, absolutely. I view myself as a city founder more even than an entrepreneur. If I'm going to build a city, I need to figure out what is it going to export? What can it export? What can it produce? What can it build? Why would people choose to live here rather than live where they came from? How can I attract immigrants? I already have the mindset of a city founder. I already have the mindset of someone who basically is trying to advocate not even just for a technology, but for a country. You should come move to my country. I'm like an immigrant spokesman because we need that. If we're going to build cities in the ocean, we need to give a compelling argument to people. Why should you live in the ocean? And a big one's economics. Can you have a good paying job out there?
I had this when I was talking to Joe this morning. I was giving my layman's sort of viewpoint, which is I love the kind of what Grant's doing, what I think these personal kind of places to live on the ocean, but they're an absolute niche market as far as I'm concerned. I would not want to live there. What I want to go straight to the floating island, and the more it looks like land, the better. The larger and the more it looks like land, the better. However, I'm aware that there's bound to be this interim period of something like interlocking structures, something that looks quite clunky and probably a little bit like an oil rig, and which isn't the kind of place I want to go and live either. However, if it's a business, it's different. I'd go and work on an oil rig, no problem. I don't care there's no forest or woodland on an oil rig. But if I was to move to a floating city, which the only way I would ever do that would be in the point where they are large islands that move around, which is coming. I'm absolutely certain that will exist. Yeah. It may not be in my lifetime. I don't really know, but
I think it'll be in your lifetime. I think it will.
You really?
How old are you?
54.
It'll be in your lifetime.
You had to think about that. But all right, describe those islands then, before we get into your other stuff. I mean, because for me, it's like, I want, like, you talk to any normie who's not into seasteading, and it will be like, can I go for a run? Can I have a campfire around in the woods? Can I walk my dog? Can I go for a jog? And for me, I'm a wilderness fan, so it would be great if I at least felt like there was this area of wilderness on these places. And because really the thought of living at sea has no appeal to me at all. But the thought of living on an island, I'd love to live on an island. It doesn't really matter even how big it is. If it has beaches around the side and a couple of biomes, you're all good, So that version of the seastead, you think that's coming in my lifetime?
It depends. It depends on what do you mean by wilderness. You could build an oil rig, really big. You could have an internal room inside that oil rig. You could make it hot, humid, add some fog, add some mist, put some trees in there, have a canopy, have like lush tropical. You could have like a self-contained box of jungle floating in the middle of the ocean. We could do that today. That would be very expensive.
No, I don't mean that.
Right.
And do you know what I've just realised is you've got to what biome are you going to choose? Because if you start out in the tropics and end up somewhere a bit more temperate, all your plants might die.
Right. Well, that's kind of what I mean. When you say what biomes are available, I'm thinking, do you mean we're going to build the biome, or do you mean we're going to move into the biome? It's like saying what biome is available in Russia. Tundra. That's what's available in Russia.
Yeah. But what I mean is, I think for mass adoption of floating cities, you've got to look to the land-based ones to get an idea of what people like. And sure, slums exist, terrible cities exist, but no one wants to live on them. And you're attracting people there. And it's not just going to be about economics. Probably it's going to be because it's an unusual thing. It's going to be about some other thing. So there's got to be green spaces. Me personally, I'd like to feel like I'm on an island. I mean, if you could make them as big as the Isle of Wight in the UK with fields and things like that, even better, and I'm sure that will actually come one day. I think in the beginning, like I say, the interim period, I'm not that interested in, but now I've just noticed what you're doing, and I'm thinking, yes, you're creating a business, then you're applying it to seasteading. Yeah, if the price was right, I'd go and work on an oil rig, or I would have done when I was younger, because the price normally is right. You get paid very good wages to go and work on oil rigs.
I'm sure a lithium mine would pay a lot of money at scale as well.
Especially a lithium mine. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So
but to kind of get back to your question, when are they going to look like islands? I don't want to disappoint you, but I don't know if they'll ever look like islands, at least the affordable ones. The ones for rich people, yeah, absolutely. But the standard ones, here's what I imagine. There will be districts. So you start with a single house, then you give it a lawn, right? So a green space. Then you add another house next door and another house next door and another house next door and a street connecting them all. And so it would probably end up looking more like suburbia. There's going to be green space. There's probably going to be some trees scattered around because that's certainly affordable. But to say that I'm going to build a 10 square mile forest in the ocean or something like that, the amount of maintenance that you're talking about is realistically, that's too much to handle. That's why you can't build a forest you can't build a forest in Russia. You can't build a tundra in the desert, right? I can't build like a snowy cliffs in Dubai, even though they'd really love to do that.
They do though.
Okay, I'll take it back. You can do it, but it's expensive. It's really expensive. It's purpose-built. It's not just something the middle class can have. What the middle class is going to have, what the average person is going to have, is a suburb here, a suburb there, another suburb over there, floating suburbia everywhere. And you walk out, you go to the bus stop, the boat stop, you get on a boat, and it takes you over to your friend's neighborhood district, or it takes you to the business district, or it takes you to the mining district. And all these districts are floating maybe a couple miles away from each other. So you have this open blue space in between every district. And you don't have to get on a bus boat to go from one district to another and ride with other people. You can take your boat. Or if you want to take your own private boat, not to a district, but just to the open ocean, ocean, there's the wilderness. There's the great expanse. You can go out into the middle of the ocean and you can go see whales, and you can go see orcas, and you can go see dolphins, and you can go scuba diving. You could even go scuba diving under the cities. Even some of them, depending on what type of seastead you're talking about, maybe it's 5 feet deep, maybe it's 50 feet deep, but you can go way down and see all of these, huge fish. There's really huge fish out in the middle of the ocean. There's oarfish. There's, hopefully you don't see a giant squid. That'd be dangerous, but sometimes they come up to the surface at night or near to the surface. There would be nature.
Why would that be dangerous? Are giant squids dangerous?
They can be dangerous. A
What do they do?
Humboldt squid is dangerous. A Humboldt squid will attack people.
What do they do? How do they attack you?
They have these long tentacles, and they reach out and they grab you, and then I guess they rip you apart.
Really?
I mean, no one's ever been attacked by a giant squid and lived to tell the tale, so I just assume they rip you apart. I'm joking.
No, but seriously, how do they like constrict you or something?
No, so what squid usually do is they have like a bunch of short tentacles and they have 2 long tentacles, and when they get nearby to something, they shoot out the long tentacles like an arrow, and it grabs the thing, and then it pulls them in, and then they have a beak, like a parrot's beak, inside of all the short tentacles. The short tentacles pull back, the parrot's beak comes out, and it just bites the thing that it just grabbed.
Really?
Yeah.
Didn't know that. What have they got? Any teeth-like structures in there?
It's a beak. It's like a parrot's beak.
Really?
Yeah.
A squid has a beak?
Yes.
Oh, Jesus.
Looks just like a parrot's beak.
Right, you learn a new thing every day. That's a complete... and I did a degree in zoology as well. I should probably know that. Now, when you describe the floating neighbourhoods and stuff, this is what instantly comes to mind. A little bit of choppy water, and now everyone's house is doing that, and the road's doing that, and the bits, obviously I'm wrong, because you wouldn't do that. So why am I thinking that? What's the reality going to be?
The reality is, so if you look at the ArkPad, we have 2 different designs on our website you can see right now. One is the Hexafarm, and we're working on improving the design. Right now it's meant for just coastal waters. I'd love to have like a more deep water version of the Hexafarm. The other one is the ArkPad. The ArkPad is on spars. So if you look at these big columns that go down to the water, if you look at an oil rig, it's built the same way. Big columns going into the water. You look at the Seapad with Grant, the Seapod with Grant, it's a big column going into the water. And the ArkPad has 9 of these big columns. And what spars do is, it's kind of complicated, so I'll simplify it down. Basically, when a wave hits the side of your seastead, it will roll under the seastead without causing it to wildly tilt back and forth. And the reason for that is because these spars minimize the contact area with the surface of the water. So instead of all the buoyancy being at like 1 inch depth, most of the buoyancy, it goes down deeper, right? So basically the way the calculation works is the more buoyancy you have below where the wave can hit, the less impact the wave has. So instead of a wave hitting you when you turn to the side, the wave can hit you and just go under, and you don't even notice it. So spars, depending on how big your spars are, how many spars you have, you can ride out a storm and not even really know you're going through a storm. But again, that comes down to personal preference. What kind of seastead do you want?
And what about movement, on the point of the compass? Do they stay in one place quite well? Because they're not touching anything, right? I mean, they're not piled down into the ground. They're literally, yeah. So what would stop things crashing into each other?
So again, this depends on, are you talking about coastal, or are you talking about like the floating cities in the ocean?
Floating cities, I think so, yeah.
What I think would happen, what I anticipate happening, is either A, they're going to be anchored to a seamount, which is a shallow area in the middle of the ocean. It's like the top of an underwater mountain. That's a seamount. You can run a line down there and anchor it. And if you anchor one here and one a mile away at the other side of the mountain, they're not going to hit each other because there's a rope connecting them to the top of this underwater mountain. So they're not going to bump into each other. If they're free floating, which usually means they're following some kind of an ocean current or something along those lines. Maybe it's like a circular current that's called a gyre. So they just go in circles all day long. And that way they'll stay in the same place, which you want for a city. If that's the case, you're going to have a single boat on standby, or you're going to have some kind of like an underwater electric propulsion system that just turns on in emergencies. And if I see that my neighborhood and your neighborhood are getting too close and they're about to bump into each other, I'm going to turn on that propulsion system and they're going to move away from each other and then everything's fine. But if the propulsion system fails and they end up colliding, they're going to collide at like half a mile an hour and nothing's going to happen.
Oh, right. The Hexa farm, I think I've seen that. Is that the one that's in existence off the coast of the Philippines?
They're both in existence off the coast of the Philippines.
What, the ArkPad as well?
Yes.
Is it?
The ArkPad C, the version C. The final version is the version D. So we actually put the C in the water last September. Since we put it in the water, it has ridden out 2 hurricanes and sustained no damages.
Did you by any chance have cameras running and things like that to see what was happening? Was someone on it when it happened?
No one was on it. We did have cameras running. And I think we put out a video last year. I don't have any recording of the recent hurricane. Actually, okay, there's another hurricane that's about to hit in just a couple of days. There's a guy that lives on an island nearby. And just before I came in and saw you today, I messaged my employee who knows the guy. I was like, hey, if it's safe, can you go out on your balcony or just go up to your window when the hurricane hits, and can you get some video for me so I can put that on social media? And so I don't know if I'm going to get any new video or not, but I know we had some pictures and video from last year.
And that's anchored, right?
That's anchored. That's
Okay.
anchored in place.
So I don't know what the ArkPad looks like. I know what the Hexa farm is. Is that the one that's an Airbnb now as well? Or
Yes.
Because I saw some Filipino influencer. Hi, welcome to my holiday. I'm kind of living on the sea. And
Yep. That's the Hexa farm.
Right. Describe it.
So it has 2 pieces. One is the farm, the Hexa farm itself. It's a big hexagonally shaped fish cage, and it's actually like kind of like a tiered fish cage where there's a cage and then another cage encompassing the smaller cage. It's like a nested cage system. And one of the reasons we did this is because the central cage is for high stocking density of fish, typically milkfish. You feed them, they're like 30 fish per cubic meter, very, very densely stocked, and then you get tons and tons and tons of them. I think last time we did a harvest of a single cage, we got about 11 metric tons in less than 6 months. So you can produce way more food than you need to feed the amount of people on the resort, which is why if this were in the middle of the ocean today, this would already be a net food exporter. We'd already be exporting seafood as of today, which is great. But then the outer cage is for the loose packing density. We pack them like 4 or 5 or 6 fish per cubic meter. And we typically use rabbit fish for this because the waste product of the milk fish will allow algae and sea sponges to grow in the cage of the rabbit fish. The rabbit fish will eat the sea sponges and eat the algae and the things that grow on the cage, and then they feed themselves. So you feed the milk fish and the rabbit fish get fed for free, which they're not directly eating the waste product. Like they're not eating poop. They're clean fish, but it's like a 2-for-1 special. And most fish farms don't do that to the degree that we do. So ours is actually a bit more efficient in that sense.
So once again, you've designed this with a way to generate income as well.
Yes.
So what about the tourism side of it? Is that part of it, or are these designed to sort of be floating fish farms essentially?
Right. So the step 1 is the floating fish farm. The step 2 is, okay, so we have a hexagon in the water. You can imagine a hexagon, right? You got the small hexagon, you got the big hexagon. Now draw a line from the corner of each hexagon. This will be hard for people that are listening to the audio. Draw a line, and what you'll end up with is 6 like cells, like little rectangular pieces that kind of go around in a big circle, right? So you have 6 of these cells. In every cell, we take another floating platform, which we just call it a reef platform because it's the Reef Resort, right? But it's basically like this fiberglass and stainless steel, purpose-built platform. And you put that in the water, and then you put housing on top of it. And the housing can be anything. We're using like glamping tents right now, but we're going to upgrade to fiberglass houses, especially when we do an expansion. And so that housing is where people can actually live. So you got the high density farm in the center, then you got the houses on the side, and then below the houses, you got the low density farm. So if you put a glass bottom floor in your room, these are mostly studio units because it's a resort, it's like a hotel, right? So they're studio units right now. You put a glass bottom, you can actually look down and you can see there's still like thousands of fish below you while you're sleeping at night. I've thought of, we'll put like a little a light in the water, so at night all the rabbit fish, they tend to kind of crowd around lights. So you can imagine when you're going to sleep, we don't have the glass bottoms yet, but we will soon. When you're going to sleep, you'll look down, you'll see all the rabbit fish swarming around and just kind of swing around in circles in this light underwater. It's going to look really cool.
How's business at this place? I mean, you're renting them out, you're farming the fish. In fact, I've got a feeling there's a restaurant there as well, isn't there? So
There's a
are you
seafood
cooking the fish in the restaurant?
Yes, we are. Yes.
So how is business going? Is it all up and ready and rentable and all this kind of stuff? I know I saw influencers there.
Yep. As of September 1, we opened for overnight stays. So in September and October, we have been fully booked every weekend for the last 2 months. And just this past weekend, 2 days ago, only Saturday was fully booked, not Sunday. But on Saturday, we were fully booked. And there was an additional boat of tourists that showed up and wanted to do like a walk-in. So we could only accommodate them for a day tour. They couldn't stay overnight because the rooms were booked. But we were basically at like double capacity. And that was fine because, again, we build these floating platforms to, some people would be worried, oh, you're over capacity. Is it going to sink? And no, it's not going to sink.
And what happens in a storm?
In a storm.
Have you had a storm?
We've had several storms. We haven't had a hurricane. The glamp houses, the hexafarm. So the glamp houses are the housing. The hexafarm is like the farm thingy that the housing sits inside of, right? So just to be clear there. It's been through several storms. It's been through tropical storms. It has not been through a hurricane because it's south of the hurricane belt. So once you get close enough to the equator, there's no longer any hurricanes. And that's important because if you want to build a floating city, a true seastead, you really do want to build it at or near the equator or in an area that does not get hurricanes. You just definitely want to do that because even if you build something to survive a hurricane, no one will be comfortable in a hurricane.
So in the storms that you've had, I presumably you just have to shut it down and say we're closed for a couple of days. Or
for the tropical storms, no. There was one time where there was an earthquake and there was a threat of a tsunami. This is a great lead up. This is a great marketing pitch for our resort. There was an earthquake, and the Coast Guard contacted us and said, you need to bring your guests back to land because we're worried about a tsunami. Now, the funny thing is, if you're deep enough in the ocean and a tsunami hits...
It's no problem.
Right. The wave doesn't break. It just rolls under you, so you don't even notice anything. So actually, if you're too near to the shore, the bigger danger is being too close to land. Now, no tsunami hit. And even if a tsunami had hit, because of where we are, the bathymetry, the layout of the seafloor, it probably would have been like 1 foot tall. So it probably wasn't a big danger anyways, but the Coast Guard still want us to evacuate. During the tropical storms, we don't really evacuate.
Is it windy in those storms, or is it just?
It's very windy. It's very windy, and there are somewhat significant waves, but not so much that it makes it uncomfortable, and certainly not enough to put people in danger.
Really?
You can easily build a safe
The
seastead.
hexafarm has pillars, or not?
No.
But it doesn't kind of go all over when the waves come.
No, it doesn't. Part of the reason is because the pillars are for rolling over huge waves. If you just have smaller, medium-sized waves, all that you really need is to kind of be built like a barge. And a barge is just like a big rectangle sitting in the water. And really, if you go wide enough with something, if you make it very, very wide, then any wave that is less than the length of that rectangle in the water, there's more math that goes into it than this, but any wave that hits it that's not sufficiently large isn't going to be able to tilt it. Instead, it's just going to hit the platform, apply stress to the hull, and as long as the stress isn't enough to break the hull, nothing happens. It just stays level. So as long as they're built strong enough, they'll just go through small and medium-sized waves, and they won't move around, unlike a boat, which a boat is built for speed, so it's supposed to go fast with the water. So you have a specific shape to go fast and a specific shape to not rock around a bunch. And obviously, the hexafarm doesn't move, so it's built to basically just always be stable. So the only waves that could rock it around are tropical storm waves, which it does rock during tropical storms, and of course hurricanes. But with the ArkPad, it wouldn't even rock during tropical storms. It would take a hurricane to really make it shake around.
Really? It's hard to comprehend that. I think unless you probably look at an oil rig in a storm.
Yeah.
Because because they withstand, they put those in the North Sea, they put those in terrible places, don't they?
Yes. And those rarely sink. When an oil rig sinks, it's much more likely to be due to human error than a storm.
Right. So, hexafarm, ArkPad, ocean mining, drones, and AI.
Yes.
That's the stack.
That's the stack.
That's the kind of seasteading stack, isn't it? And tourism, of course. Tourism is another one of these prongs, isn't it?
Well, I guess so. The stack, the income stack, is aquaculture. That's the production of fish and seaweed. Tourism, because aquaculture, you can start making money right away. Tourism, you need a marketing presence, and then you get to start making money. And then ocean mining is probably next, where you don't need any marketing presence, but it takes longer to get the technology working and get the regulations in your favor. But they kind of scale in that order, right? Like you'll make some money from aquaculture, you can make more money from tourism, then you can make the most money from the sea mining. And then once you have a floating city established and it has those three income streams, then the gates open to lots of income, because then you can do the special economic zone stuff, right? Now you can say, I'm going to attract medical entrepreneurs, I'm going to attract IT entrepreneurs, tech guys, I'm going to bring in crypto, I'm going to bring in this and that and the other thing. And actually, a lot of people don't know this. There's another technology that we're not developing. Microsoft is developing this. And this is a very good technology. It's an underwater data center. So right now, people are looking into developing more data centers because AI is booming. And so AI needs these data centers. Microsoft has, you might need to look this up for me, but I don't remember the name, but it's like a big underwater capsule that's filled with nitrogen gas, no oxygen. That's important. I'll come back to that later. It hangs below a floating structure, some kind of pontoon that holds it just below the surface. And the temperature of the ocean makes sure that it always stays at a consistent temperature, so you're not paying for air conditioning, so that slashes your energy bill by like 60%. And then because the nitrogen is inside the container, that actually means that it's a less corrosive environment than normal air, and so you have servers break down less frequently. So as long as you have someone up top, potentially on a floating platform like a Seastead, who has wires running down, and he can manage the software side of running a data center, you can basically have a floating data center in the ocean that is cheaper to build, cheaper to operate, cheaper to build, faster to deploy, and breaks down less often. And so that could be a very good thing for Seasteads once they get to scale.
What level of design and build are they at? Is that like just on paper at the moment?
I think they've built 6 of them already.
Really?
Yeah.
And deployed them?
Yeah, they're deployed. They're functional right now.
Where? Like, I mean, why aren't they? Did they contact you, or do they just invent their own little platform and put them underneath?
They're just using pontoons. They're just using like little aluminum pontoons that float to the surface. They're not using Seasteads. They're doing this not because Microsoft wants to push forward the seasteading movement, but just because they realized that this is a fundamentally good business model.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter whether they want to push forward the movement. It's whether or not you embrace it, because that's another way to monetize the movement. I mean, the movement needs an economic incentive model. It does, unless Elon Musk wakes up tomorrow and goes, "Do you know what? I'm a seasteader. I'm not a space steader." I mean, if he did,
I'd support it.
Oh yeah, I mean, it would be a better thing. In fact,
yes,
he would actually you would see more results quicker as well. I think,
100%.
Which would be more exciting in a way, because I don't know. I think sometimes it's a bit of a misnomer to say we're going to Mars, because he might be saying that in 50 years' time. He might still be saying we're going to Mars. And by that point, it will have lost a bit of its kind of sheen, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. And let's say he puts someone on Mars next year. Let's say 2026, first man on Mars. He doesn't just visit, he's going to stay there. What next? What is he exporting? What is he growing? What is he producing? How does he build a factory? How does he raise his kids there? How do you establish a city on Mars? Even if you've got one guy, what is the economic model? I mean, what are you mining on Mars that you can afford to ship back to Earth and have it still retain its value?
Have they even talked about that?
I don't know if they have.
Because, yeah, like you say, it's one thing to mine something there. It's another thing to wait 26 months or whatever. How long does it take to get to Mars? I can't even remember. It's quite... It's longer than 26 months, but it's one of those. Mm-hmm. I don't know. There's probably something on there. I mean, I would imagine if 20 years ago you didn't realise you could take metal out of the ocean, right?
Right.
So who knows what's on the surface of Mars?
There's probably some good stuff there. I would argue it's probably a better idea to establish an asteroid colony than a Mars city, but that's even further away.
Is it?
in terms of distance, not necessarily in terms of time. Like I said, I think an asteroid is an easier thing to establish a colony in than to do it on the surface of Mars because it's low gravity. So to ship it, firstly, there's a lot more exposed platinum, gold, palladium, stuff like that. Better things in the asteroid belt, they're easier to access and easier to ship back to Earth. So in that sense, just go for the asteroid colony.
I love the fact people sit around talking about things like this. It is pretty crazy, isn't it? It is pretty crazy. So yeah, that's good. I'm glad I'm speaking to you because you've just filled in one of the gaps in my seasteading repertoire, which is why would people go to the interim places between personal seasteads and proper cities? I'm not an advocate really for the idea that people are going to park all their boats close to each other out at sea. I don't think so. I don't know what you think about that. Because they do it in ports, but it's a different thing at sea unless you build some ginormous concrete floating harbour type thing. I think, I don't know. If I was to say, I've sailed. Everyone knows this. I don't really enjoy it. Okay, But staying on a boat is one thing. Staying on a boat in a port where you can pop out to a restaurant and then come back and then go to bed, that suits me. But actually doing that at sea wouldn't. All right, I'm not a seafarer, so maybe I've got a bias. But what do you think? Is that going to happen?
I think that you've already interviewed Mason Lashina.
Yes.
Yeah, and so he talked about this with the LibreArcs, didn't he?
Yes.
Right. So his idea is, and I think it's a very feasible idea, actually. There's a few reasons you might want to have a yacht flotilla, and those are sometimes called flotillas. So you might want to have a flotilla for collective defense from pirates, and it does work. If you have 10 yachts together in one location, you're not going to be attacked by pirates at that point. There's too many of you. You might want to do it in case one of the yachts breaks down, to share fuel, to share resources, or if you had 100 yachts together or 1,000 yachts together, it's very feasible that one guy could take his yacht and say, mine is now a restaurant, mine is now a grocery store, and you just board another yacht and you go on board and you buy your groceries and you have dinner. And so it could act kind of functionally like a port. Like you say, it'd be a little bit more shaky. There'd be some more waving around, but I think there'd be enough places to go that you wouldn't really feel restricted. So I think that it's very feasible. One downside is if it costs $1 million to buy a yacht, it's going to cost $1 million a year in maintenance to keep it operational because yachts are really expensive. And the point of seasteads, proper seasteads, is that they should be much, much more cheap and lower maintenance, way lower maintenance. Just the upfront cost is not even the most important. The maintenance is the most important.
But the LibreArcs, Mason's LibreArcs, they are low maintenance, aren't they?
They are low maintenance. It's a good design. It's in terms of a yacht, I'd say it's the best design out there, especially for seasteading. Pound for pound or dollar for dollar, I'd say the LibreArcs is the best yacht that you could buy. And it's to the point where I think it is a seastead. It really is a proper seastead because it has a few things that are really important. One, it's fully solar powered, which means that you don't even need gas. You don't need fuel to get where you're going. You're not going to run out of fuel anytime soon. Two, it's I think that's the biggest thing. And two is that it is lower maintenance. I could go into, because we're involved in helping Mason with the design of the LibreArcs, and there's, without going into a lot of detail, there's less things that can break down.
Well, what I liked about the LibreArcs is, once again, it has a land-based counterpart that is a massive market, which is basically like the RV market.
Right.
RVs on land are huge business. People love them. Mm-hmm. They're a part of culture. That people live in them. They do, and that was a new one for me. Hearing him say, "Look, you want to go live in Paris for a bit, then you're going to pop over to there, and then you're going to go down the Danube, and you're going to stay there, and then you might pop over to the Seychelles, or and that makes, once again, seasteading for me is all about making it make sense, because whilst I want floating islands, that's just, most people, when you say things like that, go, don't be stupid, don't be ridiculous. Even though I'm pretty sure I'd bet on the fact that it's going to happen. It's much easier. Cruise ships the same. I can explain a cruise ship to someone and then say, but what's the difference between a cruise ship and a floating island? Apart from it'll look a bit different. It won't look like a toy with all these little slides and swings and all this kind of stuff on it. It just might look different. And the same goes for Mason's Liber Arcs. I think it's great because all of a sudden I understand it. I'm like, okay, it's a floating RV basically, and I'm an RV owner, so I understand the freedom you get from it. And the only thing I would think with a Liber Arcs is, well, am I going to be able to sail that thing? And according to Mason, anyway, it's going to be something that's a lot easier to sail than your average yacht or ship or something.
Yes, definitely. It requires less maintenance. It requires much less fuel. I mean, another thing with yachts is the fuel cost is enormous. So the Liber Arcs basically solves that. So if you're looking for, again, the best bang for your buck, the Liber Arcs is the best yacht in the market, hands down. Going back to what you said about cruise ships, I would argue to some degree that cruise ships already are seasteads. Can I talk about flagging for a second?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so why is Prospera a fundamentally good place to do business? It's because you can, and I guess I don't, to verify that what I'm saying is accurate. They have the ability to. Someone can say, this is the regulation I want to abide by. They can say, in this country, they have this type of regulation. I propose that I should follow this regulation, right? So that's sometimes called jurisdictional arbitrage. Yes. You're taking different jurisdictions. You're saying, I want to follow this law. I want to do it in this way. So with a cruise ship, they can actually practice jurisdictional arbitrage for the, one ship flies one flag. You can fly the flag of the Bahamas, the flag of Panama, the flag of Mongolia, but that's not a flag that's taken seriously. If you fly the Mongolian flag, you have the benefit of no one will ever try to enforce laws on your seastead because Mongolia doesn't care about boats. You can fly their flag and they just won't,
They've got no coastline.
They got no coastline.
They got a bit of Lake Baikal.
Yeah. Right. But also, if you try to go into port with a cruise ship that's flagged under Mongolia, they won't even let you in the port.
Won't they?
No, they won't. They don't take you seriously. So maybe some crazy guy out there wants to fly the flag of Mongolia on a seastead, but I guess I have to disavow that for now. But anyways, you can do jurisdictional arbitrage in the ocean. The system already exists through flagging registries. So the idea here, and this is again goes back to why I say a seasteading city to be composed of multiple districts, because if you have 10 districts to your city, they can be under 10 different laws. Imagine that one is the business district and it's under, it flies like if Prospera had a flag, it could fly the flag of Prospera. It's basically Prospera 2.0, and you can do business as if you're in Prospera. Then you have one that flies the flag of Panama and one that flies the flag of the United States, and nobody's going to, pirates aren't going to attack the United States because that would call in the United States Navy. So now you've got this massive military defense district that no one's going to attack it. So you can use that as a safe haven. Every flag can bring a different benefit to a floating city. So you can basically take the type of jurisdictional arbitrage that cruise ships can already do, and the fact they can do it is why I'd consider them seasteads to some degree. But you can basically crank that up to an 11 and say, I want to have all of these different laws apply. I want to go to this restaurant in Panama, and I want to go back to my house in America, and then I want to go to the shopping mall in Singapore, and they're all within walking distance of each other.
It's a very interesting idea. I'll need to sit on that one for a few days to work out what the implications of that would be, because the difference with a cruise ship is you don't have different countries bumping up against each other like that, unless, of course, you're entering the port of a foreign country. But that's slightly different. That's kind of understandable. And also, whilst on paper that makes total sense, and it's like a great workaround, right? Things like that always make people, the wrong kind of people interested in what you're doing. Because you look at that and you go, oh, hold on a minute, you're just scamming the system here now. I know that cruise shipping is kind of scamming the system a bit. It's using maritime law to basically create private floating cities and cruise wherever you want without getting attacked by anyone.
But that's a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. That is a good thing. But what you've just described, whilst it's true and could work on paper, it might be a bridge too far. It might be a little bit too far, I don't know.
Describe what you think would go wrong exactly.
Well, firstly, say you said if you had an American district, you could have the U.S. Navy come and help you, or somebody.
No. As long as the president is like, I feel.
Well,
like
exactly.
It's
So you need the backing first of all, and they'll say, "Well, hold on a minute. You're right next to Panama, and Panama. We don't trust Panama. Maduro, or not Panama.
Venezuela. You mean Venezuela?
Can you have the flag of Venezuela? No, they wouldn't be on there. Sorry, stick to Panama.
You could fly the flag of Venezuela. Go ahead.
But I suppose you would have to think geopolitically as well when you created these things. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I just think. You know what it's like when you draw attention to something and then people get interested in it and then they go, hold a minute, we're going to stop that now. I think a lot of what goes on with cruise ships is not acknowledged by a lot of people because it's really none of their business in a way. And it's been going like that for a long time.
It's over the horizon. It's out of sight, out of mind.
Out of sight, out of mind. But when you actually look at it, it's incredible. From a governance perspective, what cruise ships are doing is mind-blowing. And if people in power knew, they'd be like, oh, hold a minute, we're missing a trick here. These guys can pretty much, they can choose this and they can do that and blah, 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 In the same sense that if you were a cruise liner and you said, right, I am just going to do cheap medical treatments on my cruise ship and I'm going to park it right in the middle of some port in a foreign country.
Well, you can't do it in port.
Right.
You can't do it in territorial waters. You have to be at least 12 nautical miles minimum distance from any land.
But on a cruise ship, is that still true?
That's still true on a cruise ship.
Oh, right. So you can do medical tourism on a cruise ship now, as long as you're 12 miles out?
Theoretically. I don't know of any cruise ships that are doing this at the moment. Probably because of what you're saying, they don't want to attract attention to themselves.
Yes, but that's what I mean.
But they could not do it if they were in port, to be clear. They could not do it if they were a mile outside of port. They would need to be at least 12 miles outside port.
But that's what I mean. So drawing attention to yourself then brings in the wrong eyes who look at the whole thing and go, wow, we really need to control this a bit more because these guys are, they're in charge of themselves. There's a free market out there. Even the regulations are like self-enforcing. It's great. I mean, it's what we want. But when you see what we want on land, they don't like it.
Right.
So why would they like it out at sea? If you see what I mean.
I don't think that. Who is they?
They are
they is bureaucrats.
in the case of Prospera, they is the Honduran government.
Well, it's not the Honduran government. It's the the Libre party.
All right, the left wing government. Yeah,
the left wing governments.
Yeah.
So let's say that, okay. So let's take two hypothetical examples. One is I have a seastead. It's off the coast of Venezuela. The Venezuelan government sees the seastead. They see all the freedom. They see all the stuff that we have. What are they going to do? Are they going to attack the district that flies the American flag that legally under international law would be the same as attacking an American vessel? I don't think so.
I've thought of something. What's the incentive for America to allow the seastead to flag under their jurisdiction?
Okay, so what is the incentive to allow it to is that the rules are already in place that if you pay the fee, you can flag with the American flag. As long as you meet the qualifications, you're allowed to. What is the reason that they would actually militarily defend a seastead? Pride. The reason would be pride.
Okay. I think probably because it's a bit left field. The whole idea of floating islands and seasteads is so left field. Mm-hmm. I think that would be a tall order. It's one thing to protect a US citizen on their ship. It's another thing. I don't know. Obviously, in the future, at some point in the future, absolutely, that could easily happen. But thinking about it in the first instance, it's so crazy, isn't it? Compared
not to me, but I've been doing this for a while.
Yeah. Well, not to me either. I'm thinking I'm trying to be a normie here, mm-hmm. and go, what the hell are those guys doing out there? They've created an island made up of all these different countries, and they've used each. They've used the different countries to sort of protect the thing. I mean, it's a bold sort of 5D chess move, isn't it? But
Right.
because arguably you could do just one big Prospera. So you fly Prospera's flag once they've got a flag, say, and then you just choose OECD regulations from around the world anyway, because they can do that in Prospera.
Yep. You could have one.
I like
big
the
floating
idea
Prospera.
though, because then you can leverage the best parts of the countries that you're involved in. But then something that Joe always says to me is, if you flag under so and so, like say you're flagged under Panama, but you're in the Seychelles, or you're in I don't know, Tonga Islands or something, and something goes wrong, the Panamanian, is that what you say? Panamanian,
Yeah.
the Panamanian Navy aren't going to come out and save you, are they?
No.
It's too far away. So there is that aspect that means that it could be a bit of a farce as well.
Well, so part of it is about legitimacy. Part of it is about saying, a leftist government saying these people are pirates, we need to militarily attack them, and the seasteaders being able to say, no, look, we have a legitimate flag. Here's our permit. Here's our flag. We're under Panama, so you can't attack us, right? Part of it is like, here's my excuse. Here's my permit. I get to show you my permit that says I'm allowed to do this. That's one part. Another part is, let's go back to Tonga. If Tonga militarily attacks a vessel, which is flagged under Panama, that's punishable under international law. The Panamanian Navy will not step in. Once again, there's a chance that the American Navy could. There's no guarantee because America's allies with Panama, so Panama could call America, hey, our vessel's been attacked, and America could step in. Another thing is, feasibly, you could probably just sue Tonga in an international court and have their foreign assets seized and say, you guys violently attacked a registered vessel, you can't do that, and you confiscate $500 million in their assets overseas.
Yeah, I have to say, Mitchell, it's a good idea. Obviously, you think about this stuff all the time, so things like this are floating around in your brain.
Yes.
Not to be,
It's a
I'm
good
not trying to crack a joke. No, I didn't mean it, but they are. And there's probably 1,000 more as well. But because it's a novel idea to me. I've got to think about it, because I'm thinking about whenever you put lots of different countries together. Mind you, that's not true. Antarctica has shared places, doesn't it? And they as far as I know, they don't have a huge amount of conflict.
No, it's out of sight, it's out of mind, right? Where does conflict come from? It comes from politicians causing conflict. It comes from governments saying, I'm going to fight you for your resources. There's no resources that are easily accessible in Antarctica right now, so there's no need for any conflict. If you can put your seastead not 13 miles out, but 130 miles out, which is what I would advocate for, or 230 miles out, then ideally it wouldn't be a politically contentious thing to exist, because it's just too hard to physically get there. It's too much trouble to invade, so they won't bother invading. At the end of the day, your best defense is not the flag that you fly, but how far away can you get from Venezuela? How far away can I be from Beijing, right? A big factor here is also distance. The ocean is so vast. The distances are so vast. What is the reason that China has effectively taken over Hong Kong and now they want to take over Taiwan, but it would be so much easier to take over Tonga? It's basically defenseless. Tonga is really far away. Distance is a great defense.
So do you think one day, I'm going to keep pushing you because I want this. No, but do you think one day, 260 miles off the coast of somewhere, I will see in the distance something that looks exactly like an island?
Exactly like an island.
So think about it. What the qualities of an island that you like? A beach,
Beaches,
something in the
coconut
middle,
trees,
something taller in the middle. Like or sort of trees around. Do you think that will be a reality, or do you think by their nature, seasteads will have to evolve as a kind of distinct organism kind of thing?
When you say a distinct organism,
as in,
like,
are we going to mimic? Because are we going to mimic what we already know and love
like
about
oil rigs?
No, about islands. I mean,
about islands.
So like I'm being a normie again, and the normie side of me doesn't want to go and live on an oil rig for fun, right? I want to go and live on a tropical beach for fun. So is it going to look like a tropical island, or is it going to look like an oil rig? Yeah.
I don't want to disappoint you, but Do you want me to give the real answer?
Yeah, of course I do. Yeah.
Okay, so the real answer is this. Technology generally evolves in whatever way is most efficient. That usually that doesn't mean whatever is the prettiest, right? The most productive factory is not the most beautiful factory. But that being said, again, you have to realize there can be residential districts, commercial districts, and industrial districts. Will there be a residential district that looks like a floating island with tropical beaches and houses kind of going up towards this big hill in the center? Absolutely. When we have enough seasteads, people will make a district that looks just like that. But it's not the most cost-effective way to build a seastead. It's not the most stable way to build for storms. It's not the most, it would be something for the middle class. It wouldn't be it wouldn't be like the industrial, the basic, bare bones model. The bare bones model is going to look whatever the most efficient hull design provides for. So it will look, I would say, effectively distinct. There will probably be a seastead aesthetic. You'll probably look over and say, that looks like a tropical island and it has its own aesthetic. That looks like a cruise ship and a cruise ship has its own aesthetic. That looks like an oil rig and that has a very industrial aesthetic. And that looks like a seastead. And future seasteads will not look like oil rigs, but they will not look like cruise ships and they will not look like islands. They will look like something completely distinct.
Even the ginormous ones?
Even the ginormous ones will probably not look like oil rigs because an oil rig was designed to be an oil rig. It will have a fundamentally unique characteristic. And I think that's a good thing, that seasteads will look fundamentally different. And there will be different types of seasteads that fulfill different purposes, and they will all look fundamentally distinct. Again, the residential ones and the commercial ones and the industrial ones will all look fundamentally distinct. And especially the residential ones, I expect they're going to look really pretty. And some of them will look like tropical islands, but I think most of them will have a different aesthetic.
The good thing, Mitchell, is that you're young enough to probably see this thing through to quite an advanced stage.
I hope so.
No, I mean, it's true. I mean, I'm just thinking, I don't know. It seems to me it's quite an unusual business for someone quite young to get into, because it's very weird and innovative, and you've got to really know that you want it. You really are. That's why I really like Grant. Grant's got an insane mind. Grant actually thinks that it's a good idea to create space age looking pods that you live in on the ocean, and so he built one. That's insane. Yeah. And now he's sold some to whatever the Seychelles or someone. Maldives. Yeah. I mean, it's a business. Who sits down and goes, I know, I'm going to make this thing for $5 million, and he'll probably end up making a ton of money as well. That's an entrepreneur. I think you're a proper entrepreneur, because this is crazy thoughts, floating cities but it all makes sense to me on a small scale. But also, the hardest thing I should imagine is you have to do it in stages. Mm-hmm. You can't go from naught to floating city.
Yes.
And if you want a floating city, you're going to have to sit tight on your hands for a very long time, messing around with little things and fish farms and then building it up to this, and then right now let's include this, and then and that's a long-term vision, mate. I've got a lot of respect for that.
Thank you. Rome wasn't built in a day. Venice wasn't built in a day, and no seasteading city will be built in a day.
Yeah. And Venice was one of the most successful cities of all time. I'm always saying this. It was built on the sea. There was nothing there. It was a marshland sea, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It was. I mean, I think some of the land they initially built on, it was above water at low tide and then fully submerged at high tide, and they chose to live there.
But I mean, it's the perfect model for seasteading, because they did it to get away from everything, didn't they? And It made it one of the reasons it lasted for so long as a hub was because it was hard to attack because of where it was. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Which is exactly what seasteads are as well.
That's what I'm saying. They had like a mile of water to defend themselves in the medieval era. Now, if you had 130 miles of water, 230 miles of, I think that's still a very decent defense, even in the modern era.
Do you think that the powers that be, I don't know who that is, but just let's call them the powers that be, are going to pay a lot of interest in seasteads when they start getting that big? Is it going to be something that bothers them, or is it going to be, like you say, well, it's nothing to do with us because it's not in our jurisdiction?
I think that I want to be careful what I say here. Can I speculate?
Of course you can. Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Just say you're speculating.
I would speculate that Paris is going to be hostile. I don't think that the governments that tend to rise to power in France is going to be amenable to seasteads.
Why France in particular?
Well, so a while back, I was talking with someone at the conference a couple of days ago, and I don't know what the name of like the French version of like MI6 or Mossad, or it's some kind of like French intelligence agency. Yeah. They wrote, and she said she was going to send me the copy of this. It's in French, so I have to translate it. But she was telling me they wrote a paper or a book decades ago on all of the things in the future that could go wrong and could bring about human calamity or the end of civilization. And one of the things that the French intelligence agency wrote about as one of the biggest dangers for the modern world was seasteading.
No.
They said.
When was this?
I don't remember if it was the 80s or the 90s or when. Again,
was it a thing then? When was seasteading first uttered, the word?
Roughly this, I think really the idea's been around since the 60s, the 70s.
Oh, has it? I didn't know it went back that far. Right.
It went back to Rose Island, was in Italy. That's right. Floating structure. Yeah. There was a thing called the Republic of Minerva between Tonga and Australia, about halfway between. So that was another seasteading project. They actually dredged up an island, but it was a similar concept. So I think that what happened is the French intelligence groups looked at this and they said, wow, that's bad. Freedom? That's bad. Can't have that. And so they wrote about how this could, they said something along the lines of like, if you had terrorists or like violent rebels or something that were on a seastead, it would be diplomatically really difficult to attack them. They would be physically really far away. They could be mobile, which means, building a kind of a trap or a wall around them politically is really difficult. You can't get like neighboring countries to agree to attack a city if that city can just pick new neighbors, right? So even, in multiple levels, the diplomatic ability to attack a seastead is really difficult. And this was something that worried the French intelligence agency. Can't recall their name. And so they wrote about this as being like a really big threat. And if a government says that what I'm doing is a really big threat, that's a massive compliment to me.
Yeah. So, but that does imply that they will. Do you think they'll
I hope not soon. I would like for the French government to try and attack and delegitimize seasteading when there's already a population of 2 million in the ocean. That's what I hope for. Because if they try to nip it in the bud too early, then on the one hand, they'll probably be successful. On the other hand, they'll look overzealous and hyper-aggressive. Imagine if the French intelligence agency started like assassinating seasteaders and then word got out on that. That would get tens of millions of people all over the world highly sympathetic to and highly interested in seasteading. So obviously governments in the modern age, they don't tend to overreact in violent manners because it's bad PR, and PR is a really big deal. But if they wait too long, then they can't stop it anymore. So that's what I would hope for.
Well, I've seen that play out a number of times, and I think you'll be fine. I mean, it's happened in a number of things that are unusual. Bitcoin's a great example. It's been known about since the beginning by the powers that be. Mm-hmm. But it was so weird and wonderful and unlikely to succeed.
That they didn't shoot anybody over it.
Yeah, and by the time they got their shit together, and they haven't even really got their shit together yet now either.
No, that's
and it's too late anyway.
Yeah, they're so slow moving. They couldn't catch Bitcoin. They couldn't catch Ethereum. Ethereum is also already established. They can't stop that. The governments are too slow moving, and the free market just keeps getting faster and faster and faster as technology evolves. And I really believe that seasteading technology will move so fast. You don't think of the maritime industry as being fast moving. It's notoriously slow moving. But I think that seasteading technology can move so fast that 50 years from now, governments will turn their head and they'll say, why is there 5 million people over there in the middle of the ocean?
Yeah.
And it's too late.
I think you're right. I think that it'll all happen. It will. It'll be, they'll suddenly realise. Yeah. No, well, that's, it's good to hear anyway. And I'm like I say, I'm glad I spoke to you because I've spoken to all the other seasteaders on the whole. I haven't spoken to the Sealand lot, actually. It's kind of like the original project, really, isn't it?
Yeah, you should talk to them because their story is a bit different. They didn't fly under the radar at all. I know. They actually got into several...
They got guns out.
They got guns out and they fired the guns multiple times.
I tried very hard to get them here, but they're very hard to get hold of. They never answered their emails or anything, but I will, don't worry.
Do you have them on WhatsApp?
Yeah. And Signal and Telegram and everything. No, it's fine. It doesn't matter. I've got ample of what I need, but they will be on my radar to come on the show because, like I say, I've spoken to everyone else, and what I like about what you're doing is you're attacking the whole thing in a holistic way, as in, how am I going? Let's monetize this thing first. And I know you could argue that everyone else is monetizing it, but they're monetizing it by buy my thing.
Yes.
You're monetizing it by come and work on my thing, my thing generates money.
If I can sell a thing, if you can sell someone something to buy, they might buy it. If you can sell someone something that they can live in, they're likely to buy it. If you can sell someone something that they can live in and also generates passive income for them, they're very likely to buy it.
Yeah, that's great. I think we should leave it there. That's a nice positive end to it's actually, Mitchell, the end of my time here in Prague as well. Have you enjoyed the Free Cities conference?
I always enjoy the Free Cities conference. I enjoyed the conference and I enjoyed this recording as well.
It was amazing. You're absolutely right. I got to see a few talks even this year, but it is. Tell me whether you think that something's different this year. That there's something about the movement has kind of got over a little hump, and there's something new happening. Is that just me?
No, I think so. I think I don't know if I'd say it's gotten over a hump. I'd say that I see a pattern leading up to exponential expansion. I see more people, more interest, more money, more than what we had last year. And what I also see is more seasteaders showing up to this conference as well, and more people talking about seasteading. And I think that's a really good thing because the two groups that need to get a lot of traction right now are seasteaders and network states, and have those two things come together, and then boom, you've really got something that is going to be a very advanced technology cumulatively.
Thank you, Mitchell. Lovely to speak to you. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for coming in so late as well. It's getting dark. You're the last. And good luck with everything. Genuinely good luck. And I'll be following closely from now on. So thanks. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim.